I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability.
We will fight, and we will win. Together, we will make America powerful again.
And I have to start off by saying that's Biden. That's not Trump, because we came in on January, just the quarterly numbers.
"100 days in, Donald Trump and Elon Musk have failed to make your life more affordable."
During the war, everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future.
January 20th, 2025. Against the backdrop of an anxious nation and an even more divided political landscape, Donald J. Trump took the oath of office for the second time. The event was marked not by celebration, but by tension. The crowd on the National Mall was sizable, but so was the security presence. The air was charged, not just with anticipation, but with uncertainty. Trump's return to the presidency came after a deeply contentious election. Accusations of voter fraud, legal battles in key states, and violent protests surrounded the transition period. The legitimacy of the process was questioned by millions, again, fueling a political powder keg that had not fully cooled since January 6, 2021. From the moment he stepped onto the stage, it was clear that this Trump was not just continuing a presidency, he was staging a comeback. And he came back not as a reformer, but as a conqueror. During his inaugural speech, he promised to drain the swamp again, and this time for good. He painted a picture of a country that had lost its way under President Biden, economically, culturally, and militarily. And he positioned himself as the one man capable of fixing the disaster in record time. But the America he returned to was a very different place from the one he left. Inflation remained a persistent issue. The southern border was in crisis. Public trust in government institutions was at an all-time low. Meanwhile, abroad, US allies questioned the reliability of America's commitments, especially after years of unpredictable foreign policy swings. China's economic influence had grown. Russia was still entrenched in Ukraine, and Israel's military actions in Gaza had become more aggressive, with international outrage mounting. Domestically, things were no better. Partisan distrust was higher than ever. School board meetings turned into shouting matches. Social media platforms were flooded with disinformation from both sides. Gun violence was rising. Mental health crises deepened. Into this chaos, Trump stepped, louder, sharper, and more focused than in 2016. The first 100 days of the presidency are often considered a political proving ground. A chance to show the country what real leadership looks like, a window into what the next 4 years might bring. But Trump is not a president who plays by traditional rules. His first 100 days have been nothing short of a political earthquake, shaking not just Washington, but every corner of the country. In this video, we will break down the key moments of this unprecedented return to power, what Trump has done, how the country has reacted, and what it all might mean for the future of the United States. This is not just about politics. It is about power, identity, and the soul of a nation still caught in the storm. Donald Trump did not waste a single day. Within hours of retaking the Oval Office, he signed a barrage of executive orders aimed at reversing the Biden administration's policies and re-establishing what he called true American governance. For Trump, it was about making a clear statement. Business as usual was over. The first order targeted energy policy. Trump withdrew from key environmental pacts and suspended dozens of climate regulations instituted over the previous 4 years. Oil drilling permits were fast-tracked. Federal land protections were rolled back. The Biden era push for clean energy halted. In its place, a resurgent commitment to fossil fuels. We are no longer going to kneecap our own economy in the name of globalist climate agendas, he declared. Next came immigration. Title 42, which had expired under Biden, was immediately reinstated by executive order. Deportations resumed and asylum applications were drastically restricted. Trump authorized the military to assist in operations along the US-Mexico border and greenlit renewed funding for the border wall. Within 3 weeks, the administration claimed a significant drop in illegal crossings. Civil rights groups, however, condemned the actions as inhumane and legally questionable. Healthcare was not spared either. Trump directed the Department of Health and Human Services to begin dismantling key provisions of the Affordable Care Act. Though repealing the law entirely would require legislation, administrative steps were taken to weaken its enforcement, ending the individual mandate penalties and allowing states more flexibility to opt out of coverage requirements. Education policy saw a dramatic pivot as well. A controversial executive order banned the teaching of divisive concepts in federally funded schools, specifically targeting race and gender-related curriculum. Trump's team called it a necessary step toward patriotic education. Critics said it was government overreach and censorship. One of the most aggressive actions came in the realm of federal hiring. Trump reinstated and expanded Schedule F, a classification that allows the president to fire tens of thousands of federal employees deemed disloyal or resistant to his agenda. This move sent shockwaves through the civil service. Government agencies braced for mass firings. Whistleblower protections were challenged in court. And morale within departments like the EPA, DOJ, and FBI hit new lows. The response from Congress was swift, but divided. House Republicans largely praised the moves. House Speaker Elise Stefanik called it a course correction from 4 years of socialist overreach. Senate Democrats, on the other hand, warned of executive overreach bordering on authoritarianism. Public reaction followed partisan lines. Trump's base was energized, finally seeing a president who fought back against the deep state. Meanwhile, liberal-leaning cities saw renewed protests. Social media trended with hashtags like #ResistAgain and #NotMyPresident. The national mood was tense, volatile. By day 30, over 40 executive actions had been signed, nearly matching his 2017 pace. But this time, Trump knew the system. He knew the levers to pull, and he showed no signs of slowing down. This was not just policy reversal, it was political revenge. The economy was one of Trump's most heavily emphasized battlegrounds during the campaign. And by day 2 of his presidency, it was clear that the America First economic doctrine was returning with a vengeance. Inflation had eased slightly from the record highs of 2023, but costs remained painfully high for ordinary Americans. Trump's solution? Deregulation, corporate tax relief, and a full-scale attack on what he called woke economics. On day 5, Trump unveiled the American Prosperity Plan, a sweeping set of proposals that included another round of corporate tax cuts, reduced capital gains taxes, and a rollback of environmental and labor regulations that businesses claimed were slowing growth. We are bringing jobs back. We are bringing investment back. And we are going to make the dollar strong again, Trump announced from the Rose Garden. The stock market responded immediately. Within a week, the Dow surged past 40,000 points for the first time in history. Defense contractors, oil companies, and tech firms with offshore holdings all posted record gains. But the celebration was not universal. The Federal Reserve, wary of Trump's aggressive fiscal moves, issued a statement on day 18 warning that excessive stimulation in a still recovering economy could reignite inflationary pressures. Despite that, Trump continued his campaign-style rallies, touting market success as proof his plan was working. Behind the scenes, however, economic pain persisted. Wages remained stagnant, while the cost of living, especially for rent, food, and healthcare, continued to rise. Critics argued that the market boom was benefiting the wealthiest Americans, not the working class Trump claimed to champion. And then came crypto. On day 40, Trump signed an executive order declaring the United States a digital finance innovation zone, effectively removing federal barriers to cryptocurrency development and use. The Securities and Exchange Commission was ordered to ease regulations on crypto exchanges and plans were announced to explore a government-backed digital dollar, one not managed by the Federal Reserve. The crypto market soared. Bitcoin neared $90,000. Ethereum hit a new all-time high, but alongside the euphoria came instability. Scams and pump-and-dump schemes multiplied. Several smaller crypto banks collapsed under the weight of risky investments, prompting fears of a repeat of the 2022 contagion effect. Meanwhile, Trump announced the creation of Opportunity Zones 2.0, a revival of his first-term tax shelter for investment in underdeveloped areas, though early reports suggested the majority of beneficiaries were already wealthy real estate developers. Labor groups and economic watchdogs sounded alarms. Union leaders argued that deregulation was making it easier for companies to cut benefits and dodge safety laws. Economists warned that trickle-down theories had failed before and would likely fail again. But Trump remained undeterred. He tweeted on day 55, "The stock market has never been better. Jobs are coming back fast. Inflation is going down. We are winning again." But for the average American, gas was still $4.29 a gallon. A grocery run still cost over $200. And credit card debt across the country had hit an all-time high. For some, the economy was roaring. For others, it was just noise. In Trump's second presidency, foreign policy did not begin with diplomacy. It began with disruption. By day 10, Trump announced that the United States would halt all military aid to Ukraine unless Europe pays its fair share. The announcement sent shockwaves through NATO. In Kiev, President Zelensky pleaded with Washington to reconsider. But for Trump, the message was clear. America would no longer foot the bill for what he viewed as someone else's war. Republican hawks like Mitch McConnell expressed concern, while populist lawmakers applauded. Meanwhile, Russia seized the opportunity. Kremlin officials called Trump's move a sign of maturity and intensified their offensive in eastern Ukraine, exploiting the momentary vacuum in American support. The move strained U.S.-European relations, especially with Poland and the Baltic states, who feared they might be next on Putin's list. Then came the pivot to China. Trump imposed fresh tariffs on Chinese electronics, pharmaceuticals, and rare earth minerals, essentially restarting the trade war. He accused Beijing of manipulating the global economy and hinted at restricting TikTok and other Chinese apps again, citing national security concerns. China retaliated by suspending several U.S. tech licenses and launching new military exercises near Taiwan. The tension escalated fast. By day 60, U.S. warships were once again patrolling the Taiwan Strait. Chinese naval vessels shadowed them closely. Military analysts warned that a single miscalculation could lead to open conflict. Yet, Trump framed it all as peace through strength. He claimed the Biden administration had been weak, and that his assertive stance was restoring America's respect on the world stage. He even floated the idea of withdrawing from NATO unless European nations immediately increased their defense contributions. While the Pentagon tried to contain the diplomatic fallout, Trump fired his defense secretary on day 62, reportedly for refusing to support a more aggressive stance in the South China Sea. The replacement? A former military general turned cable news commentator known more for bombast than strategy. Trump also reignited his America First approach to the Middle East. In a fiery speech on day 75, he reaffirmed unconditional support for Israel, calling it the only true democracy in the region. Simultaneously, he froze all humanitarian aid to Gaza, justifying the decision by accusing US-funded NGOs of aiding terrorists. Global criticism was swift. The UN condemned the move. Protests erupted in London, Paris, and New York. Domestically, the national security conversation shifted to the border. Trump ordered the National Guard to be deployed along the southern frontier, not just in Texas, but in California and Arizona too. The administration claimed that military-grade security was essential to stop what it termed an invasion. Civil liberty advocates pushed back. Legal scholars questioned the constitutionality of the move. But in towns like El Paso and Yuma, opinions were split. Some residents welcomed the soldiers, others feared escalation. By day 90, America's foreign policy was not merely assertive, it was volatile. Trump had reshaped alliances, reignited rivalries, and reframed America's role on the world stage, not as a stabilizer, but as a disruptor. In the eyes of his supporters, he was reclaiming global dominance. In the eyes of his critics, he was lighting matches in a house full of gasoline. By day 100, it was not just Trump's policies making headlines. It was the whirlwind of public reaction, online chaos, and a media ecosystem completely reshaped by his return. The nation was living in two realities, depending on which channel or platform you turned to. On conservative media, Trump's second term was framed as a triumphant restoration. Fox News, Newsmax, and the Daily Wire celebrated every executive order and rally as part of a national correction. Coverage was saturated with images of cheering crowds, improved stock market tickers, and clips of Trump lambasting the radical left. Pundits praised his decisiveness and framed criticism as proof of his strength. But over on mainstream and left-leaning outlets, CNN, MSNBC, NPR, the story looked drastically different. Analysts warned of authoritarian creep. Legal experts dissected every executive action for constitutional violations. And the word unprecedented was used so frequently it began to lose its meaning. Editorials questioned the legitimacy of the 2024 election results. Talk shows ran nightly panels on how democracy dies. Social media amplified the division. On X, formerly Twitter, hashtag Trump is back trended alongside hashtag dictator-in-chief. TikTok was flooded with political satire, breakdowns of Trump's policies, and user-led calls to action. Instagram stories were once again political. Memes, fact checks, and protest schedules all swirled together in a sea of red, white, and blue rage. Facebook? A minefield of family feuds and misinformation. But perhaps the most volatile battleground was Trump's own platform, Truth Social. He posted dozens of times a day, using the space to bypass traditional media entirely. His tone was more aggressive than during his first term. He labeled journalists as nation wreckers, mocked opponents with nicknames like Sleepy Joe 2.0 and Fake Kamala, and hinted that the real battle was still ahead. And then there were the rallies. By day 50, Trump had already held 5 Victory Tour events in battleground states: Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, and Georgia. They were televised, shared widely online, and often packed to capacity. The message, the people are with me, and in many places, they were. But not everywhere. On college campuses, anti-Trump protests re-emerged with new energy. In urban centers like Chicago, New York, and San Francisco, marches drew tens of thousands. The Women's March returned. Teachers' unions organized strikes in response to the education orders. Civil rights groups challenged the immigration directives in federal court. The FBI, already under pressure, released a memo warning of increased domestic extremist chatter. Some pro-Trump militias were organizing defense units in preparation for deep state sabotage. Meanwhile, leftist anarchist groups discussed countermeasures. The temperature of public discourse had risen to a boiling point. Even comedy was fractured. Late-night hosts returned to anti-Trump monologues. Satirical shows thrived on impersonations and sketches. But right-wing comedians and influencers shot back with their own content, often going viral in parallel digital universes. In essence, America had returned to the trenches of cultural warfare. But this time, it felt more organized, more entrenched, more desperate. Every press conference was a flashpoint. Every policy decision sparked 1,000 takes. And somewhere beneath it all, millions of Americans were just trying to live their lives. But in a country where every decision is a litmus test, neutrality felt impossible. To understand the true significance of Trump's second term, we have to look back to 2017, when he first stepped into office as a political outsider, promising to drain the swamp. Back then, the tone was unpredictable, but not yet hardened. There was chaos, yes, but also a sense of experimentation. He was a disruptor, learning the rules as he broke them. Now, he is not learning anymore. He is executing. In his first 100 days in 2017, Trump signed 32 executive orders, a record-setting pace at the time. Many of those were flashy but symbolic. Travel bans, regulatory freezes, and a few big gestures toward tax reform and military spending. The White House felt like a reality show. Advisors came and went. Internal leaks dominated the headlines. Steve Bannon's shadow loomed large. Compare that to 2025. This time, there is no learning curve, no Bannon, no guardrails. The executive orders are not symbolic, they are structural. They aim to consolidate power, reshape institutions, and exact political revenge. Within the first 100 days of his second term, Trump signed more than 45 executive actions, many of them with far-reaching implications, not just for policy, but for the function of government itself. And then there is the tone. In 2017, Trump still seemed to crave mainstream approval. He gave interviews to major networks, played nice with world leaders, at least occasionally, and walked back some of his most extreme statements. There were moments, however brief, where he appeared open to compromise. In 2025, that door is shut. There are no olive branches, only flamethrowers. The administration leaks less, talks tougher, and engages with the public exclusively through platforms it can control. Traditional press briefings are rare, and when they do occur, they are combative. The cast of characters has changed too. Gone are the moderating voices, like former Defense Secretary James Mattis or National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster. In their place are loyalists, figures whose primary qualification seems to be personal allegiance, not policy expertise. This has made the second-term cabinet more unified and more dangerous. There is less debate, fewer checks, and more room for impulsive decisions. But perhaps the starkest contrast lies in the public's response. In 2017, opposition was loud, but hopeful. The Women's March broke attendance records. The courts blocked several of Trump's early moves. Activism surged in a way that felt fresh, energized, and effective. Now, the opposition is still loud, but the hope is thinner. Many Americans feel like the system they trusted to hold the line has already begun to break. The courts have shifted right, Congress is gridlocked, and Trump's political machine is better funded, more aggressive, and more connected to local and state power structures than ever before. The first 100 days of Trump's second presidency are not just a repeat of 2017. They are a refinement, a recalibration. If the first term was about testing the limits of presidential power, the second seems determined to erase them. By day 100, the Trump administration was not merely navigating crises, it was generating them. And the cracks were beginning to show. The first major flashpoint, healthcare. On day 28, Trump announced his administration's plan to finally repeal and replace Obamacare once and for all. But unlike in 2017, there was no pretense of a comprehensive alternative. The replacement? A stripped-down set of executive actions designed to expand short-term insurance plans and remove federal requirements for coverage standards. Critics called it Obamacare Light without the care. Within days, hospitals warned of surging uninsured rates. Patients began reporting surprise bills in emergency rooms. A coalition of governors, Democrats, and moderate Republicans alike signed a bipartisan letter urging Trump to reconsider. He dismissed it on Truth Social, writing, "Obamacare was a disaster. We're cleaning it up. No more free rides." Meanwhile, in education, Trump moved to ban federal funds from any schools that teach critical race theory, radical gender ideology, or anti-American values. The order's wording was vague, but the chilling effect was immediate. Teachers across the country began self-censoring. Several state legislatures rushed to align their curricula with the federal stance to avoid funding cuts. The American Civil Liberties Union filed suit by day 63. Then there was the environment. The EPA, gutted once again under Trump, reversed more than a dozen climate protections from the previous administration. Oil drilling resumed in federal lands, including areas near national parks. Trump withdrew the U.S. from global climate commitments made during the Biden years, calling them job-killing scams pushed by globalists. Wildfire season arrived early in California. Flash floods hit the Midwest. Heat waves scorched Texas and Arizona. Climate scientists warned that these rollbacks would make future disasters worse. But the administration doubled down, celebrating job growth in the fossil fuel sector and accusing critics of eco-communism, and looming over it all, reproductive rights. By day 45, Trump signaled support for a federal 15-week abortion ban, stating that every life is a gift from God. Though he stopped short of endorsing a nationwide total ban, his judicial appointments were already doing the work. Several key rulings out of newly Trump-aligned circuit courts upheld state-level restrictions that left millions of women with no local options. Protests erupted across the country. Major cities saw mass mobilizations, reminiscent of 2020, but tinged with greater urgency. At the same time, Trump-aligned state governments passed election integrity laws that restricted protest permits, implemented curfews, and increased penalties for public disturbances. All of this, healthcare, education, environment, reproductive rights, collided with economic anxiety and global instability. And at the center of the storm stood a president who seemed unfazed by the chaos. To Trump and his inner circle, the backlash was a badge of honor, a sign they were winning. To millions of Americans, it felt like the foundation of their country was eroding in real time. So, where does that leave us? With a nation teetering, and a president who believes that pressure is power. 100 days. That is all it has taken to reshape the tone, the structure, and perhaps even the soul of American governance. Donald Trump's return to the presidency was not just a continuation, it was a transformation. The firebrand populist of 2017 has reemerged not only emboldened, but more strategically ruthless. With institutions weakened, loyalists entrenched, and millions of Americans still rallying behind him, Trump has accelerated his agenda with surgical precision. But at what cost? The country today is more divided than ever, not simply along party lines, but in lived realities. For every citizen who views Trump's second term as a much-needed course correction, there is another who sees a deliberate dismantling of democracy. The policies are not just polarizing, they are existential for many. Healthcare decisions are life or death. Immigration crackdowns split families. Education mandates determine what future generations are allowed to know. Trump understands this. He thrives in it. In fact, polarization is not a byproduct of his leadership. It is the strategy. By stoking outrage, he keeps the media locked onto his every move. By targeting institutions, he reminds his base that he is fighting their enemies, not just governing. And by exhausting his opponents, he gains time, space, and momentum. The parallels to his first term are unmistakable. But there is a darker undercurrent now, a feeling that the checks and balances may not hold this time. The courts are more conservative. The administrative state is weaker. Many Trump-era critics within the GOP have been replaced or silenced. And yet, the resistance still breathes. From local elections to labor unions, from student movements to independent media outlets, millions are pushing back. They are protesting, organizing, litigating. They are running for office in school boards, city councils, and state legislatures. They have learned from the past, and they are preparing for the future. Because that is the reality. We are only 100 days into a 4-year term. The biggest fights lie ahead. Will Trump move to further curtail press freedom? Will the Department of Justice become a tool for retribution? Will civil unrest spiral into something far worse? Or will the system, however battered, still bend without breaking? We do not know. But one thing is certain. The America of today is not the America of January 2025. It has changed in policy, in tone, in spirit. And those changes, whether you support them or fear them, are defining a new era in the country's political life. This is not just a presidency. It is a reckoning for democracy, for power, for truth, and for all of us. The next 100 days will be even more defining than the first. The question is no longer whether Trump will reshape America. It is whether America can still shape itself.